I still think there's a chance these guys are traded before opening day. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Red Sea Radio. My name is Corbin. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. And today, we're going to be going over 4 players that I think the Red Sox still have a chance of trading before the season begins, starting with a couple of honorable mentions. The first one being Masataka Yoshida. Now, if the Red Sox get the opportunity to trade Masa, I don't think it would be a surprise to anyone if they make that move, right? It's not because Masa's a bad player. It's just because of a roster fit right now. A full-time DH doesn't totally make a ton of sense, especially a left-handed DH. The problem here, and the reason he's not officially on this list, is because I just simply don't think this contract is totally movable. I think if it was movable, he would have already been gone. We saw that the Red Sox tried to attach Triston Casas' name to Masa and still couldn't get that deal done. I think the combination of the contract, the surgery he had this offseason, and the fact that he didn't play any defense last year really gives teams pause in taking on this deal. So I don't think I could put him on this list just simply because I don't think at this point it's a reality that you can move Masataka Yoshida. And the other honorable mention is, of course, Triston Casas. I hate it with every part of my body. I hate it with every fiber of my being. I think it's a really dumb move by the Boston Red Sox to trade Triston. I think ultimately he does end up on the opening day roster. But I also think if the right deal comes along, the Red Sox aren't going to be afraid to move him. Again, really stupid. I don't even want to go into details about this, despite the fact that both Casas has been reassured by this front office. The front office has reassured us that Triston Casas isn't moving. I can't help but think that there is a possibility he still gets moved. So we do have to talk about him in this video. I just don't want to put him on this list, mostly because I just simply don't want to see him get traded. Okay, now that we got the honorable mentions out of the way, let's get into our actual list. Now, this list isn't in any particular order. It's just sort of a number of guys that I think could still be moved. I think number 1 on this list is Wilyer Abreu. Now, we've actually talked about the potential of moving Wilyer Abreu quite a lot this offseason. Coming into the offseason, especially in my mind, I thought he was a legitimately valuable asset. He's coming off of a Gold Glove season. He was a top 5 or 6. I can't remember if it was 5th or 6th in Rookie of the Year voting, right? He had some really big moments for the Red Sox this offseason. I figured he'd have a whole lot of value. As we get closer to opening day now, I don't know if other teams are viewing him the same way us or the Red Sox are viewing Wilyer Abreu. I think a lot of teams are sitting there really nervous that he's going to end up as a simply platoon guy going forward in the future, right? He just simply did not have good metrics against left-handed pitchers this season. It is something that I think Alex Cora loves to shield these guys against same-handed matchups in their first full seasons in the big leagues, so that probably had a lot to do with it as well. It's just not a huge sample size for it, but I think that's putting pause on teams. Originally, the idea was, okay, you could put Wilyer Abreu as possibly the headliner of a deal for a frontline starting pitcher. Now, I still think the conversation remains that Wilyer Abreu is on the block if the right deal comes along, but it's certainly not going to be for a frontline starter. In my opinion, if the Red Sox are going to trade Wilyer for anyone, it's going to be for a high leverage reliever. The Red Sox don't appear to want to or can spend money on anybody, but specifically high leverage relievers. They brought in Chapman, but outside of that, they're letting every other high leverage guy go to a different team. It is possible that they sit there and say, okay, instead of taking what's left on the market, we go out and we find a deal to bring somebody in. And I think Wilyer's name will be heavily involved if that is the route the Red Sox are willing to go. Not because I think Wilyer's a bad player or doesn't have any value or anything, but looking at the outfield as it is right now, it's about to get real crowded. If you include Rob Refsnyder into the equation, you already have 4 players that can play the outfield for the Red Sox at a fairly high level. Then you include Roman Anthony, right, the number 2 prospect now in baseball because of Roki Sasaki, and Christian Campbell, who might end up in the outfield regardless of who the Red Sox bring in if they're bringing in a bat, mostly because I have a lot of faith in Vaughn Grissom to have a really big bounce back year. So you already have a pretty crowded outfield. At some point, you got to move somebody. Wilyer kind of makes the most sense at this point in time. I wouldn't be surprised if it's Cedon either. He is under contract, and I think that bodes well for him staying with this team. I think Greg Breslow has talked about how they want his defense in the outfield, but again, I don't think he's unmovable either. I just think it's more likely that Wilyer is sort of the odd man out here, which is a good thing, right? The Red Sox have too much talent. They need to pick from that talent to bolster other players in this lineup. I will say, as we get closer to opening day with Wilyer Abreu. I wouldn't be shocked if the Red Sox are sitting there right now saying maybe this is a guy we hold on to until the trade deadline, right, and bolster an area we didn't know is a need until we actually get there, especially if they aren't fully planning on giving Roman Anthony or Christian Campbell the nod come opening day, which is a real possibility. But I still think Wilyer Abreu should absolutely be on this list. The second name I have on here is kind of a unique one. It's one that I haven't seen a ton of rumors on. It's one that we haven't really seen a ton in terms of trade conversations about. So there's really no basis for this trade idea except for just my head thinking, this might make sense in a weird kind of way. And that is Connor Wong. Connor Wong was your everyday catcher last season. Obviously, there were things that I think Red Sox fans are really concerned about with Wong specifically defensively coming into 2025. The Red Sox did pick up 2 catchers this offseason. They aren't big name catchers, but Carlos Narvaez is a name that the Red Sox have really kind of drooled over since bringing him into this organization. He's an extremely solid defensive catcher. If the Red Sox really want to kind of go the total opposite way here and really shore up that defense behind the dish, which might not be a terrible idea, Narvaez could end up being your starting catcher. They also got Blake Sable, who was kind of left-handed Connor Wong in his fullish season at the major league level. Last season, he was actually really solid defensively. Giants saw a lot of improvement from him behind the dish last year. It's just a much smaller sample size. I don't know. There's part of me that thinks if the Red Sox are truly comfortable with Narvaez and Sable being the combination behind the dish, you could move Connor Wong and get something relatively valuable in return. Wong, metric-wise, looking at advanced metrics, not exactly a favorable player, right? A lot of his advanced metrics are a little bit scary. But at the same time, too, the back of the baseball card at the end of the day, what he's actually producing on the field was still really solid. It was an above average bat. He had a fairly high average. I think there's some value there on the trade market. He's a catcher. That's a premier position that you don't really see available a whole lot, especially via the trade market. So if the Red Sox are looking once again to bolster that bullpen or maybe bring in a right-handed bat somewhere else in this lineup, I could see them potentially taking a look at what Connor Wong could bring in on the trade market. Again, it's nothing super crazy. None of these trades are going to be groundbreaking trades, but if the Red Sox do really want to not spend money, a high leverage reliever could come via a trade. A right-handed bat could also come via trade, and Connor Wong, I think, could be in the mix for that. At number 3, I've got Kutter Crawford. Now, I like Kutter a lot. I actually think, especially now that the Red Sox have legitimate frontline guys in Crochet, Houck, and potentially Walker Buehler, Crawford's going to settle in really nicely as an above-average back-of-the-rotation type starter, right? A guy who's going to give you a ton of innings. He's going to be right around that 4 ERA mark. If he gets the home runs down, he could be a really nice back-end-of-the-rotation type arm. But at the same time, too, the Red Sox, they have a lot of depth in this starting rotation right now, including Giolito, who is going to be healthy for opening day. He confirmed that at Winterfest. It's something we kind of already knew, but people for some reason doubted. You now have 6 men in that rotation just right off the rip. On top of that, you do have some legitimate depth this year that I don't think you really had last season. Richard Fitz has some MLB experience now. Quinn Priester's in your organization. Hunter Dobin's had a really great year in minor league baseball. He's on the verge of being ready for the big leagues. He's on the 40-man now. You do have some options this year that you didn't have last year when it comes to your starting rotation, which makes some of these guys a little bit movable. I don't think you're going to go with Bayo. You extended that guy. I think the Red Sox still believe he's got a ton of potential. I still believe he's got a ton of potential. You're not going to move Houck, right? He was an all-star last year. You need those frontline guys. You're probably not going to move any of the names that you brought in this offseason. So now you look at it and you say, well, who's left, right? It's those 3 depth guys, and it's Kutter Crawford. Kutter Crawford, of those guys, has the most value. Again, the reason he's on this list is because the Red Sox may utilize this depth in the rotation to go out and get someone else that bolsters a area of this team that isn't as deep as this rotation is right now. Again, it's another name that I would consider to hold on to till the deadline and kind of see where you're at. If the Red Sox are still in contention, maybe this is someone you use to sort of improve an area that you just didn't know you needed to improve until the deadline comes around. But again, you take a look at it, and specifically I think for the right-handed bat, Kutter makes a lot of sense, right? If you were going to use him for a high leverage arm, I would consider just converting him into a high leverage arm. Not that he would want to do that, not that that's not a slap in the face, but if you want to hold on to him, that could make some sense as well. So if you're going to move Crawford, I think it's for a right-handed bat, preferably a younger, controllable right-handed bat as opposed to an older, sort of on the end of their deal bat. But Kutter's got some value on the open market, and I think this is a name absolutely to pay attention to as we head into spring training. Again, especially considering the Red Sox don't like to spend money. And the final name on this list, sorry Money Mike Madness, has to be David Hamilton at number 4. Now, David Hamilton's kind of a unique case because overall last year, he certainly had his up and down with the Red Sox, right? There were moments where he was really good. There were moments where he was really bad. It averaged out to a below average overall impact bat at the plate, 92 OPS plus. But at the same time, too, the overall statistics really aren't terrible. You combine that with the fact that defensively at second base, he was your best defender last year, right? He was actually a really good second baseman. Shortstop, not so much, right? We could have a conversation about that, but you combine defense with a little bit of offense, right? Maybe his second full year in Major League Baseball yields better results as he continues to improve at the plate and his speed, and he's kind of a valuable guy. The problem here for the Red Sox is that you've got a whole lot of options in that middle infield. Already on this 40-man roster, you've got Story at shortstop. Grissom's most likely going to be your second baseman. You've got Nick Sogard and Romy Gonzalez in there as well. On top of that, you add in Christian Campbell and potentially Marcelo Meyer at some point this year. And that's what, 6 guys I named off the top of my head that are sitting in the middle of this infield for the Red Sox. That's a whole lot of people and not a whole lot of spots. The Red Sox, they want to get more right-handed heavy. They're looking at potentially bringing somebody in as a second baseman already, which would make this infield even more crowded. At some point, you got to move somebody, right? It's going to be hard to find David Hamilton everyday playing time on this current Red Sox team unless someone goes down with injury. But even then, right, you've got Sogard and you've got Romy Gonzalez who can also play a solid second base and who bring a bit more versatility to this lineup. So I look at it and I say, okay, of these options, which one could yield you a really solid result? And I think David Hamilton, you could trade away, not decimate your farm system, and still have a really solid setup at second base. David Hamilton, in my opinion, again, you go back to what do the Red Sox need? They need a right-handed bat. They need a high-leverage reliever. I don't know if David Hamilton's alone going to bring back a big impact bat, but he could absolutely bring in a high-leverage reliever because it doesn't need to be a crazy big name. It doesn't need to be a Emmanuel Class A level trade or a Ryan Helsley type trade. It could be a trade for a guy like Camilo Duvall, who was struggled last year, but has a ton of potential to be a legitimately high leverage arm. And I absolutely could see David Hamilton's name pop up with a Camilo Duvall-esque trade. So I absolutely had to include him on this list. And I think that sort of wraps it up. There are 4 guys on this list. All 4 of these guys, I think you could make the case need to stay with the Red Sox. I think there's also cases to be made why they should be traded from the Red Sox before opening day. So I want your opinion in the comments down below. What do you guys think? What do you think about my list? Is there anyone on here who stands out to you as sort of the number one, hey, this guy could still be traded? Is there anyone on this list that you think, absolutely, Corbin, there's no way this guy gets traded? And is there anyone I missed? Is there anyone currently on the Red Sox that you're sitting there being like, if they don't trade this guy, I'm going to be surprised? Let me know all your thoughts on the potential trade assets the Red Sox currently have in the comment section down below. As always, if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor. Make sure you guys have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. If you're new here, we talk Red Sox content almost every single day. Also, make sure you guys have hit the like button on this video as well. It just simply helps out a ton, and it's the best way to let me know you're enjoying the content. Don't forget, if you want to listen instead of watch these episodes, the best way to do that is to head over to your favorite podcasting app and look up Red Seat Radio. Thank you all very much for clicking on this one, and I will see you in the Red Seats.